Your case is not decided by the evidence. It's decided by the psychology of the decision makers. Here are the 7 biases that decision makers bring to any proceeding and what you should know when you're presenting for a panel, a jury, or a judge. First, the 10-second rule. The most important part of your presentation is the first 10 seconds. That's when the decision maker forms a perception of you, a belief about your credibility, about your persuasiveness. Those first 10 seconds are critical. The decision maker is going to be focusing on your posture, how confident you are, how smooth your delivery is, how composed you are, whether you have a strong opening line. These are critical factors, both what you say and how you say it, both the tangible and the intangible, that in those first 10 seconds can make a difference between winning and losing. Because remember, when you're presenting a case, don't think about it just from your point of view. Think about it from the point of view of those who will ultimately decide your fate. Number 2, confirmation bias. Every decision maker comes into a proceeding, whether it's in a court, whether it's HR, at a university, in the workplace, with certain preconceived notions, certain beliefs about your case, about what they believe, who's credible, and how they will likely rule. So what decision makers do is they cherry pick the facts in your presentation that fit their preconceived narrative and their predetermined outcome. You need to be aware of this because judges, all decision makers, they may seem like neutral fact finders, but their biases often are confirmed by selective application of the evidence. Number 3, moral heuristics. Decision makers don't just judge you on logic and facts. They're human beings. They look at your behaviors, what you're saying, how you're saying it, and they have this intuitive feel of whether it looks honest, whether you're respectful, whether the outcome you're seeking is fair. So remember that feeling and emotion plays an important part in decision making. Number 4, authority deference. And this is particularly for students. If you're in a disciplinary proceeding and being charged with cheating by a faculty member, what will the decision makers do? They're going to defer to the faculty member because they have a higher position of power and authority. And that leads to more deference. And that puts you at a disadvantage. Number 5, cognitive load. Think about the life of a decision maker. Think about how many different academic misconduct proceedings they're dealing with, faculty disciplinary proceedings. Think about how many hearings judges have. They are overloaded cognitively. So what does that mean? It means they're going to adopt the simplest and easiest narrative. They're not going to get into the weeds and all the nuances. They want a solution that is clear, straightforward, easy to implement, and then they want to be done with it. That should inform how and what you argue. Number 6, affect bias. Your emotions during a hearing determine how you will be perceived, how credible you will appear. So, for example, if you're calm and confident, that means you're credible. If you're defensive, that translates into guilty. If you over-explain, it has the ironic impact of seeming like you're hiding something. You need to be aware of that. Because when you're crafting an argument, making a presentation, You need to take all these biases into account because they're going to impact how you say something, what you say, the theme you choose, the counter arguments you address, the strategic concessions that you make. If you're only thinking about your argument through your eyes, then you're shutting out the most important perspective, and that's of the decision maker. Number 7, and finally, the story coherence test. At the end of the day, does your story make sense in the real world? Does it pass the smell test? If you're accused of plagiarism and you wrote this masterpiece, a 120-page thesis that matches a famous literary work word for word, except for maybe a few words, and your explanation is, it's just an incredible coincidence, I can't explain it. I guess great minds think alike. Well, you will be laughed out of the room. Because that's not something that makes sense in the real world. So don't just look at a proceeding as a neutral, law-based endeavor. There's a human endeavor to it. Okay? That human endeavor means first impressions matter. Confirmation bias is real. Moral heuristics matter. Authority deference is present. Cognitive load leads to preference for simple, not complex resolutions. Affect bias and story coherence. So when you know these things, as an advocate, student, faculty, lawyer, whatever, your first 10 seconds, you're going to make sure are phenomenal. You're going to understand the facts that the decision makers who are opposed to you are likely to rely upon, and you're going to cast doubt on the validity of those facts. You're going to make sure that you come across as honest, credible, and respectful. Moral heuristics. Now, when there's authority deference, what do? You show instead of telling. You create a story using the facts. Because ultimately, no matter how much power your opposition has over you in terms of status, the facts are always king. You know that cognitive load exists, so what are you going to do? You're not going to craft the most complex argument or propose the most nuanced, multifactorial solution. You're going to simplify everything for the decision maker. Make it easy for the decision maker to want to rule in your favor because your solution is workable, easy, and straightforward. Affect bias. Knowing that it exists, you've got to control those emotions. It's hard to be calm in a high-stakes matter under intense stress. But if you believe in your argument and you're telling the truth, you will be calm. And that calm and that confidence will project the kind of credibility that wins cases. You're not going to get defensive. You're not going to over-explain because you know that that signifies guilt and concealment. And finally, when you're putting this puzzle together called an argument or a presentation, you got to ask yourself, does this really pass the smell test? Is this something that makes sense in the real world? So make sure you have those 7 biases on your checklist and make sure that your argument takes them into account so that you win not just on the facts, not just on the law, but on the human level. That's what leads to victory. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you liked it, hit that like and subscribe button. We'll see you next time.